Alright guys, HyDra here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far some drama back on the menu as of last night, some big further roster rumours as to what some of these other CDL teams might be cooking up going into the new season, but some questions on how valid these rumours really are. But what could well be true is that HyDra and Ghosty were not exactly the best of friends last season. Parasite reveals that especially towards the end of the year, things got kind of spicy behind the scenes. Who's at fault? Where have all these stories emerged from? What does it mean in terms of rivalries for the upcoming season and also for HyDra as a teammate? Very much intro to your thoughts on the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Plenty to get into. We'll talk a little bit more about Black Ops 7, the movement and all that other type of stuff later on today. Miles and others, they have confirmed that the Call of Duty League season, because it was the World Series of Warzone stuff happening yesterday, the CDL will start early December. So the game we think, I don't know if they've actually confirmed when Black Ops 7 comes out yet, but November the 14th or something, that's the rumour. There have been CDL seasons, not CDL, there have been Call of Duty competitive seasons where there have been events even in November, very shortly after the game has launched. There have been a good handful of CDL seasons, or just seasons, where there have been an event before Christmas. It's happened occasionally during the CDL, but usually our first LAN is January or later, which is suboptimal, but some sort of online competitive play in early December, it's at least better than it could be. So I suppose we'll take that. They also talked about quite a few things, what's going to happen with ranked when it's going to arrive, what the timeline is there. As they say, Season 1's going to have 6 additional 6v6 maps. I know some of you guys pointed it out yesterday that there is an argument that many of the maps that are coming to this game that we have seen so far that are in the beta, maybe they were just holdovers from Black Ops 6, right? Because everyone was kind of surprised why BO6 wasn't really that good, right? Treyarch had years to develop it, and it didn't really hit that hard. Whereas the talk now has been for a few months that really BO6 wasn't the main game. BO7 was always meant to be the main game, and for some time they were holding back a certain amount of content for this upcoming title. So hopefully we get a good season of competitive maps. I would love to see another year where we have a solid map set to start, but then we actually make changes. We have done so in the league over the last few years, brought maps in, got rid of maps, but you know, I like to see a pretty regular, let's say, turnover of that. And we know nowadays that the CDL has seemingly decided that whatever the pros think has no bearing on them. The league will simply choose, we're going to put this map in, we're going to get rid of that map. And I think that's probably a good thing in general, because if you let the pros choose, nothing will ever change. As I say, World Series of Warzone was last night. Scump and others were watch partying this. There was eventually a champion of it. The kind of main talking point, I think, here around Warzone yesterday, because I still find it just frustrating to watch at the best of times, but they had the World Series of Warzone Global Final, and congratulations to FIFA Kill and those guys for taking the dub. But there was a big name retirement yesterday from the competitive Warzone side. As we know, it's been that, well, they're now kind of considered the Falcons team, right? But for some time, Biffle, Soka, Shifty, they were pretty much dominant in the Warzone side. Hasn't been so true as of late. They didn't win the Esports World Cup this year, but Biffle is a big name creator, big name player in that space. If he turns on the stream, he'll get thousands of viewers, and, you know, I'm imagining he's raking it in from Twitch revenue right now. So the question for Biffle has been, do I stay, do I go? And I think he retired last year as well, but then they brought back Verdansk or whatever it was, and he decided, you know what, let me run it back. But he did say yesterday that after this one, he's going to call it a day and is going to move on in his career and do some other things. So there's been a little bit of talk about what he's going to do next. Of course, the most likely scenario is that he says, you know what, I'm done competing in Warzone. Don't blame him, to be honest, and just streams and collects a paycheck. But let's not forget with Biffle, there was quite a lot of talk that there was CDL interest for him, just because of all of the Warzone players, he was kind of considered to be the one who had maybe one of the highest, if not the highest, like raw ceiling, raw potential. Someone who, if he came and tried to play competitive Call of Duty multiplayer on that perspective, he could do some serious damage. So there's just been a little bit of discussion on whether he could still be an option on that front, because some teams probably would still be interested to a certain extent. But there's also Falcons, right? Because Falcons, we know that Xnid and Pred and Cellium are there. They've confirmed Cellium. Pred and Xnid, I don't know if they've officially tweeted out like they're coming back, but we know that they are. It's the other player, the fourth man, right? Kismet, he was meant to be the fourth on the flex. And look, maybe it's probably still going to be happening. But just with all this going on, there was a little bit of talk, given that Biffle, I mean, apparently he got an offer, didn't he? I don't know where it was from. There was some talk that he got an offer from like an LAG or something a couple of years ago. Don't know if that's true or not, but there were rumours that CDL teams were interested. He is on the Falcons, right, as a Warzone player. They've not yet confirmed their fourth man. He's retiring. People are talking about him doing other stuff. You know, some people are beginning to question whether Falcons might say, you know what, Biffle, do you want to come in, you know, join the COD team and maybe give us a bit of upside? It will take some learning. I don't know if I like that idea so much in terms of a roster, but I do think that it would be pretty exciting to see how it would go. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But speaking of other roster stuff, even Zoom was commenting on this as well and says, you know, maybe Biffle can actually do it. Could he compete in the CDL? As I say, if he wants to, there are some teams out there right now trying to build some rosters that he may well need to try and join. Now, a couple of clips I wanted to share for you guys from Parasite on the flank last night. So they talk about some of these rosters. Of course, we know the majority of them, but the teams, Ravens, Surge, Cloud9, that we really have no idea what they're cooking up, they apparently have some ideas anyway. Now, there have been some questions as to whether what Parasite's saying here is actually true or not. I did see this comment here on the Reddit that said that Mumba said that this was false and that his source is trash. So, you know, who knows? Mumba is linked to one of these, well, linked in some way to one of these rumors that we'll see in a second. So I'll share this clip on potential rosters these teams are looking at. Of course, it's also worthy to consider that the Ravens, I mean, we're still really sure what's going on here, right? Are they still going to be the Ravens? Are they going to bring back the same old, same old? Are they going to go to Space Station? Are they going to get sold to SSG like we thought that they were? Still, there's been no updates on that. And, you know, the longer that things go on here, we're now in October, we would probably have expected some sort of rumors as to what was going to happen next there. But for now, it doesn't seem like much is transpiring on that front. But also what he had to say on some drama at Thieves. Now, if you watch the video that Thieves made on EWC, it's pretty clear that things obviously weren't all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes. And there have been some questions as to what that meant in terms of their team. Parasite was pretty clear that HyDra and Ghosty were probably not going to run it back again for various reasons. Now, where the fault lies for this, who is the key player in this drama, who's justified in their opinion, that is a different question.
What? You agree?
I just looked at it, bro. That team is pissed.
Wait.
Where's Slasher, bro?
Wait, this could be mega fugazi, but there's a player in the league that like leaked some rosters that he's heard to somebody that I know, and these they're not complete, but like according to this person, I could be completely getting fooled.
It's all right, you're good.
But
what
I want to
say?
spread some interesting conversations. Vivid, Mac, and Legend on Surge, obviously fourth to not be known. Ravens potentially has Slasher and Mamba as ARs, and Cloud9, Beans, Afro, Abe, and One. That's what I saw.
All right.
Hold on. Okay, whoa. There's a lot here. Because C9...
There is a lot here. But again, this could just be mega fugazi. But this is what somebody told me. And I'm not going to say they're high up on the food chain.
Legend's not even on the website.
It could be horseshit, but like, you never know.
So there's a couple.
I'm gonna tell you now. You want to know whose maturity year it needs to be? It needs to be fucking Paco's, right? Because Paco has had, granted, they could have been warranted, has had problems with two teammates now in Dante and probably Dan, and that is the reason why he's probably not on this team. Paco has a very listen. Paco has a very
Ben.
Do you know that for a fact?
Speak, and then you can.
I might know.
But he's throwing out a wild one there. Do you know that for a fact?
I might know some things, but anyways, listen. Paco is he's a person that wants to play the game a very certain way, and when people do not agree with him or maybe have differing opinions, you know, it could rub him the wrong way. Paco is a star in his own right, and he's a very smart player. I'm not going to listen, bro. I'm not going to.
Are you saying for a fact that there were issues between Dan and Paco last year?
I'm going to go ahead and say I might know some things, but the point that I'm trying to make here, is, listen. If anything, it needs Paco. Paco needs to have hold together his fucking.
So let's discuss these rosters first of all. These were some of the rumors that were getting thrown around. So Surge, Mac, Vivid, and Legend, potentially. Now, Mamba, we think, has said this is cap. Now, we believe that Mac, Vivid, Mamba, and Craze were all an option for search, right? As in, they could sign the entire quartet. But I do understand that there is interest in Legend, right? Bringing in OpTic Legends, current Halo Pro, one of the most talented players over there by quite some margin. Look, if I was running a CDL team, I would be trying to sign Legend, I'll be honest, right? Now, what you do with the rest of the team is a good question, because I really want to put Legend with a veteran, right? Now, I know there's not too many veterans still around, and to be fair, Mac and Vivid have been around for several seasons, but it doesn't strike me as the optimal combination to get the best out of Legend in terms of leadership, if you see what I'm saying. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Then Ravens, you know, what are they cooking up? They're bringing Slasher back again, which honestly, I don't hate it, but you know that I'm kind of like Slasher, so I'm a bit biased there. People are going to say, oh, I can't believe it. Look, there was a possibility that Slasher could have gone, we think, to G2, but we think that maybe Skies is going there instead. If Ravens do get sold to SSG, I thought they were going to be very interested in getting Legends, but maybe that's not going to be happening anymore. And then Cloud9, they're looking at Abe, possibly, right? So not aBeZy, but Abe, who was on that Toronto team last season. He's actually still signed to Toronto. Toronto have basically said, if nobody signs him, we're going to keep him on our bench, but if you want to sign him, you can buy him off us for free. So don't buy him, just get him, basically. Beans, Afro, I think Afro getting a spot is highly, highly deserved after last season. I've said before, like, I still think Beans is a league caliber player. He wasn't as good last year as I thought that he might be and that I expected him to be. But I still think that if Cloud9 are forming, you know, a budget team, this is a pretty decent start, actually. So, you know, but maybe this is all cap anyway. So who knows? Intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. The other key drama was around Ghosty and HyDra. Now, the first thing that people were talking about here was, okay, where's Parasite got this from, right? Because we know that Parasite and Ghosty were pretty tight back in the day. I mean, when Ghosty was about to get into the league, I think Parasite was one of the players who was gassing him up the most. So there has been a little talk as to, oh, did Ghosty send Parasite a message just to, like, throw a little, let's say, nugget of information out there so the community would go ahead and run with it. But it is interesting nonetheless. Now, look, Thieves, when the team doesn't deliver at the end of the season, often teams have internal conflict, and winning cures a lot of it. But at the end of the year, when the World Championship and the World Cup did not go to plan, it was pretty inevitable that something had to happen. So it's just interesting the way I think that this is framed, because yes, HyDra, you know, if you look at the history that he's had as a player, he's not always got along with all of his teammates. Let's not forget the major drama in the Vanguard season with Kremp. But also, Kremp is in a similar position, right? Many of his teammates over the last few years, he also burned plenty of bridges with, and clearly Kremp was not the easiest guy to team with either. So, yes, HyDra may not be the easiest teammate to get along with. He thinks he's the best player in the game, probably, right? And if it's not going to plan, HyDra's gonna see, like, you know, damn, I'm getting costed by this guy. It's kind of like how Scump was back in the day, to be honest, when he was dominant and he was looking at his teammates costing him and thinking, damn, you know, here we go again. Now, not saying that's totally always the case with HyDra, but I could understand where that logic comes from. The discussion as well was potentially around Sib on that New York team that they were part of, right? They dropped Priester. He was a pretty unproblematic teammate. They brought in Sib. There were some clashes there between that SMG AR combination, you know. But again, Sib, does he have the does he strike me as the easiest teammate to get along with? Not necessarily. He's also had some issues as well with various rosters. You know, obviously that one especially, right? The New York team that became Cloud9 at the end of last season. And then you've got the Ghosty thing, but I think, no, I'm not going to try and defend HyDra too much here because we don't really know what's happening behind the scenes, but it's not like Ghosty also hasn't bumped heads with other teammates, right? Like the way that it's framed here as, oh, Pacos have problems with two teammates. Well, you could also argue that Ghosty and HyDra had issues, but also Ghosty on the team with OpTic, right? Like at the end of that season, I don't exactly know what the situation was with Dashy, but Shotzzy made it pretty clear that those two weren't necessarily super aligned at the end of that season. And yeah, that was Ghosty's first season, so it's understandable. And, you know, I like both of these players. I think that they've got very bright futures ahead of them, and sometimes teammates don't always get along. But I thought this was pretty fascinating. As I say, there's been plenty of clips talking in detail about the drama that HyDra had with Kremp back in the day, and the general theory here, and look, Parasite didn't say specifically, okay, he's got to get more mature, but he says he's just got to figure out how to mesh with his teammates better, which I think is kind of part of maturity, right? So I think on some level that is the implication, really, that HyDra's got to do a better job of getting along with some of his teammates to make sure that his teams don't just blow up after a short amount of time. And there's probably some truth to that. But HyDra's also quite possibly the best Call of Duty player that we have in the game at the moment. Now, is he going to get along with aBeZy and Kenny? I think that's also a pretty good question. I could definitely see HyDra and Kenny having their fair share of arguments and disagreements. And I do think that for Kenny's sake, he's got to drop something better than a 0.3, because if he doesn't, then I can imagine HyDra thinking down, like, you know, we might need to get this guy off the team. But as we've discussed, maturity, things can change over time. Where's this story really coming from? Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.